Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 52 of Behind the Camera with Andy Games, the podcast where we shine a light on the storytellers, the creatives, and the voices behind the camera. This week, I'm joined by keynote speaker and trust and performance coach Reid. Roy's story is one of resilience, growth, and purpose. After surviving a life-threatening medical event, he embraced a powerful second chance at life and now dedicates his work to helping others build trust in every aspect of their lives. Roy shares how trust is more than a concept, it's a tool for transformation. If you'd like to support the show, head over to the About section where you'll find a link to my Linktree. It has everything from social media pages and merch to the website and much more. Like, share, follow, comment, or leave a rating. Every little bit goes a long way and I truly appreciate it. Now, here's the interview. Roy, welcome to Behind the Camera with Andy Games. Absolute pleasure to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking.
Of course. My pleasure at all. So, so let's get into it. So you are a trust and performance coach, but you were formerly of Advent Health, but obviously due to a specific illness that you fell under, to put it lightly, back in 2019, obviously that all changed. So if you'd like to sort of tell us just about this and how this kind of shaped your future coming into becoming a performance coach.
Absolutely. I've been 30 years in the communications business, doing public relations, marketing, internal and external communications for a variety of organizations. And at this particular time, I was executive director of communications for Advent Health. If you're not familiar, Advent Health is one of the largest not-for-profit, faith-based healthcare companies in the United States. We're in 50 markets with hospitals, physician practices, and otherwise. And my job at the time was managing the corporate communications pretty much for the whole organization, internally and externally, and focusing on a lot of executive communications. The story takes place in 2019. It was May 25th, typical night with my wife and I. We went to one of our favorite restaurants for dinner. We went to Home Depot to get the list of things I needed to do around the house that weekend. Came home to watch a movie, and I fell asleep on the couch. About 2 a.m, I wake up with the worst pain I'd ever felt in my chest, like someone was punching a hole in it. Ran in the bedroom, woke him up, jumped in the car. We started driving to the hospital, and on the way I had a stroke, so completely non-responsive. Can't tell her anything going on. And when we get to the hospital, the nurses drag me out of the car, get me up on the table, and one of them recognizes that it's not a heart attack. So it wasn't blockage that most people have when they have a heart incident. It was called an acute aortic dissection, which means that the heart was literally splitting open along the aorta. And if I don't get into surgery immediately, I bleed out. So they airlift me from a hospital in Altamont Springs, Florida, which is about, as the crow flies, a 20-minute drive to the main campus where they have all the high-level tertiary care. And for 6 hours, the cardiac surgical team worked on replacing the entire upper arch of the aorta. So about 30% of my heart is now synthetic material. The damage from this was so significant. The concern was that there had been so many periods of time with the incident that I had gone without oxygen that my brain and the other organs were at risk. And so the best possible scenario for them was to put me in a coma and see if the body would begin the healing process itself. And so I was in that state for a week. And for 7 days, nobody knew what was happening. And the prevailing wisdom at the hospital that was being whispered in the halls was there was no prognosis for a positive outcome. That if I survived, which the chances went from 2% when the incident occurred to much better after the surgery, that I would have long-term brain damage, that I wouldn't be able to communicate, that I'd likely need nursing care for the rest of my life. And on that 7th day, I woke up and I was me. I had my faculties. I was obviously in a really bad state to do that, to begin the healing process, but got up that day and within a a day or so, I was walking and beginning to do the exercises. I ended up staying in the hospital for a month and was out of work for 6 months during that initial stage. But when I went back to work, they discovered that as a result of the aneurysm and the dissection, another one of the parts of the aorta had an aneurysm. And so they had to put me back into surgery that next February of 2020 and put a stent
Yeah.
in there. So, Andy, my first day back to work full time was in March of 2020. And if we all have a calendar note in our lives, we know what was going on back then. So here I am as a communication person in the midst of a global pandemic,
Oh,
back to work. And I look at it that God has a plan, that He puts us in places that we need to be when we need to be it,
yeah.
and getting back to work at that level, doing that job, was really also part of that healing process that I was going through.
Yeah, of course. Like there's so many layers to that story. Like it's honestly so fascinating, especially from there being a 2% chance of just survival alone, not to mention every other possibility. So based on all that then, like what was it like waking up from the coma a week later and then finding out all that? Because obviously I've never been in a coma myself, so I can't really talk about it. But like, say for example, you wake up and I'm assuming you just kind of wake up and it's like kind of I, I mean, you're functioning at that point, but
Yeah,
what was it like then finding out that that could have been entirely different, but you waking up as kind of feeling normal?
that's a question that I love to talk about because it's not something that everyone gets the opportunity, if you will, to experience.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating too because the brain doesn't stop working in that state. So there's a reality that I had experienced during those 7 days through dreams and other things that took place in that time that I had to figure out what was going on. And in my subconscious, I knew that I was in the hospital because a lot of what I was dreaming about or experiencing had to do with being in that state, being in a
Mm-hmm.
state where I could not do anything. And so a lot of those were primarily I couldn't get to my family. I couldn't get to my wife and my kids, and I was trapped in places. I was prevented from being with them. So there was a lot of fear. There's a lot of anxiety with that. And so when they woke me up, and the experience of waking up, I tell people is imagine waking up in the middle of a plane crash. Everything's chaotic, everything's going on around you. You have no idea where you are in that first moment. And so my wife's standing over me, the nurses are standing over me, they're bringing me around, and all of it's now coming into focus as to where I am and what the situation is, and it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
Uh, it's unbelievable then to begin hearing from the surgeon and some of the other providers, the nurses, my wife, my family, what exactly it was and what it looked like and the prognosis throughout each of those steps. So I think part of the reaction on my end was obviously surprise, obviously, also figuring out that the last 7 days of what I experienced was not the reality of what the situation was.
Yeah.
And even having, I've told my wife before that we'll be out in a place walking around and there might be a smell or I might see something that triggers back to those dreams I
Yeah.
was having during that time. And it's, you have to cope with that. You have to cope with what you have to do to recover. You have to have a realistic expectation of what your body can and can't do. And then you've got to confront all of the things that were wrong going into it and start building back trust with yourself and with the people around you to get your life in order as to where it needs to be.
Yeah. That's honestly, it's such fascinating stuff because I'm sure it gives you like a completely new lease of life and perspective on life, considering how, in your particular position, it's kind of a solid example of how precious life really is and how, like, at absolutely any moment the next hour is not guaranteed, for example. Like that's honestly fascinating. So then fast forward then to March 2020, COVID, of course, like going back to work, and the, obviously that kind of, we all, like I say, we all know what happened around then. So how did that affect, obviously, given the fact that you were just back from sort of a long-term illness, two surgeries?
Sure.
Was that like fine to go back to work, or was there like some measures put in place?
Well, I'll start before that because it's important to think about the context of the steps to get there.
Mm-hmm.
You have to really lean into the people that are taking care of you, and you have to lean into your family, and you've got to make everything right in each of those steps. And Andy, you also discover where you've come up short
Yeah.
in your relationships and other places. And so, simultaneous to just the physical recovery, is the work to be done to take care of the relational side of things too. And it's baby steps at first. So, when I first was released from the hospital and I had been walking around the unit with a walker at first and then eventually on my own, I would take walks outside and I might be able to walk for 15 minutes and then go sit down.
Mm.
I would eat something and become immediately tired. And when I talked to the physical therapists and the cardiac rehab team and asked them about that, they said, "Well, what does a baby do when it eats? It immediately falls asleep. Why? Because it's new. I mean, it's new to life altogether." And they said, "Roy, you have a new heart. It's got different pieces in it. It's operating in a new state, and so it needs that sleep. It needs that recovery. It needs that care that you're going to have to give it long before you get back to work." And so, going through cardiac rehab, starting a regimen of regular walking, taking better care of myself, leaning into those relationships, and working hard to get them in the right state. All of that played a factor in getting there. So by the time I got to work, and it's almost a year later, I'm a different person.
Yeah.
I see life. I live life differently. And those first few months in the COVID situation, and as I said before, um, the situation I was presented with, I went to work on a campus that normally had 3,000 people working on it, and the only people working on it in March of 2020 were the communications team, which is maybe 15 people, and the executive team, which is another 30 people in the whole campus. And so I had that whole campus to myself to do my walking as I needed to work on the recovery, and really lean into that very difficult work of managing that communications for the hospitals and the hospital organization. And when I came back, I was really laser focused on communications for our CEO and the executive team. And being able to do that work really helped me stay focused on a smaller portion of it, allowing me to exercise, getting back to work, getting back in the saddle, and doing all of it. So because of the caregivers I had, because of the love and the support I had with my family, and really some miraculous intervention along the
Mm.
way. I tell people mine's a story of mission, medicine, and miracles. Um, it worked, and I did. We got to do some really good work at a very difficult time.
Definitely, like, and it sounds as though you returning to work at that time was almost like a blessing in disguise, because it allowed you to sort of help with your further recovery and physical therapy surrounding that. Because I think that's something that sometimes people don't really understand, is the physical therapy needed after any
Yeah,
form of surgery, regardless of how big or small. And then obviously you had two heart surgeries. That's very, very significant, to sort of put it lightly. So there's a lot of kind of recovery in that. So just on the sort of whole heart surgery, then, like, and all your recovery from, say, going into your second surgery and all your rehab from that, like, at what point did you sort of know 100% that you were going to have like a better quality life than you had before?
it's a journey. During my first day, I was terrified going home. and my confession here to you, the audience, and anyone else that tunes into this was I found myself during those latter days in the hospital trying to figure out how can I stay here longer. Uh, and I'll also tell you that if I'm told I have to go into the hospital, I have no fear. I feel for me it's the safest place I can go to besides my home, and I have such a complete confidence in the people that take care of me in that state. So a lot of things shift, and one of the other things that happens is when you confront your mortality is recognizing again where you fall short and what's most important and how are you going to now pour into those things and make sure that you're being the husband, the father, the friend, the coworker that you really need to be. And one of the things that I've adopted coming through all of it is what I consider to be my overall purpose in life, which is to love people, to be grateful, to give generously, and to make a difference. And looking through the lens of that, I can sit here today and tell you that as horrific as it all sounds, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. It redefined who I am. It redefined where my priorities are. It reinforced the faith that I need to have in my Lord and my family and the things that really matter in life. And to make sure that you're getting all of that right first before you dive into all of the other things. And those filters define the kinds of people that we need to be in those spaces.
Yeah, of course. And like, I imagine the sort of perspective it kind of gives you. Like you say, you kind of realize where you might have fallen short, where you need to kind of improve. And it's astonishing the sort of like what can give you that perspective, because like if you haven't gone through anything like that, I don't think you're it won't be as easy to kind of see these sorts of things, like unless you kind of like experience. And like it's honestly it is just it's fascinating and it's such inspiring stuff. So that leads us then to you left Advent Health in 2022, and
Yes.
you've been a trusted performance coach and keynote speaker since then, and author of the Trust Transformation as well. So something as well I wanted to touch on is there is like a heavy theme surrounding trust with what you do and how you speak and things, and I think that's very very important sort of thing to talk about. Does that come from you having your life in like the medical team's hands and having the trust in them to get you to where you are, or at least get you better at that time?
That's a great question. That journey actually started for me in 2005 or six. I was a partner in a public relations firm, and I really struggled to help my clients all understand that the outcome of every communication should be to improve trust
Mm,
in whoever the audience is that you're talking to or communicating with. And so it led me on a journey to unpack the question, then what is trust and how does it work? And so I began developing these core concepts, and it really obsessed me to the point that it motivated me to change my career move. And so I ended up going to work for a college of business at the University of Central Florida, in large part because I knew that would give me a scientific playground
yeah.
to test these ideas out. And the dean need at the time was to really change the culture of the college from one that had been very transactional, where students just kind of showed up, checked the box, and then went on. And we wanted it to be a more relational and experience in that regard and get them engaged and get them thinking about the people side of business. And so I had this parallel track where I was refining and working on that idea. And then in 2016, Advent Health recruited me to come back. I had worked for them early in my career. I got recruited to come back. And when I came back, the education team and the publishing team approached me and said, "We love this content. We think it's got merit in creating an experience for our employees to learn this because as a healthcare provider, you have zero time to create trust with somebody in a crisis moment." And so they asked me to find a way to work health and well-being elements into it. So I partnered with a physician and my co-author, Dr. Omira Mansfield, and we launched an education and training program, evidence-based, all heavily researched in 2017 to the employees at Advent Health. And it quickly became very popular. I'd say up to this date and time, they've probably put 7 to 8,000 people through the program. And so as that was happening, then in 2019, I had this experience. And it's not often in life, we talked earlier about the percentage and chances of having a medical condition like this, the chance of surviving that condition. But you add a layer on top of that I'd been working and teaching and training people on trust at
Hmm.
that now for over 15 years. And now I had to confront trust in an entirely different way and far deeper than we could go in this conversation we're having. But it rocked my world and had me look at trust in a whole different light. And the way I had to now go and rebuild it in some places, restore it in some places, and really change my life and changed how I lived and did things in a way that made it so much deeper for me to now be able to stand in front of an audience or work with a leadership team or coach and counsel somebody in a one-on-one setting with all of those experiences, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the happiness that comes from that deeper sense and that deeper opportunity to build trust.
Yeah, of course. And the thing I find incredibly fascinating about that is the amount of layers that there are to the sort of notion of trust. Because,
Right.
like, if you, to go back to say, like, your earlier career, you want sort of you're teaching your clients the sort of the basics of trust, the concept of trust. And if you look at it on like a professional level, like, or say even like a consumer based level, or in like, go to a hospital, you're paying money for a service, you trust that it is up to your
Yeah.
standard. Like, that's kind of just bog standard. Like, you get rushed to hospital, you trust that the medical team are going to take care of you. Now, I mean, given the state you may be in, you may not really kind of have that choice, but you kind of just have to trust them anyway, that sort of
Right.
thing. And then you have like personal trust, where you have the choice almost to like trust somebody. And then it is just a fascinating thing. So then, and then obviously, do you bring that notion then, based on your most recent experience, into your line of work when you're with your clients?
I do. I do. You hit on a good point that I want to reemphasize, because one of the other questions that I get asked a lot is where do leaders usually make the biggest mistake in trust? And I tell people it's when we assume it, when we just assume it's there. Because when you break it down and you look at humans, we all have different experiences in life that define how we are going to do certain things. So we we all trust differently. Some people are really quick to give their trust, really easy to get engaged at that level, and others have had experiences that have walls and razor wire and other things that keep trust so deeply buried that it's very difficult at times to do that. So when we assume it, we go in handicapped and might miss something very important. So one of the key ideas here is that we need to be intentional about trust in our lives. And we need to be authentic in how we do it. And we need to take into account the other person and where they've come from and what they've experienced. And it sounds like a lot of work, but it's really not. It's really, when you're intentional and you're engaging people with that idea, it opens up a lot of things that might be difficult to deal with maybe on the front end, but pay out in dividends on the back end, because they have that recognition that you're being sincere with them, and that you care about them as a human.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting as well, because like, when you say that, I think about like my current work structure in my normal 9 to 5. It's there isn't really that kind of element of trust
Mm.
spread throughout. Now, I don't know, maybe it's a millennial thing, I'm not too sure, but like at the same time, it's like I have like managers who are very, and this is like kind of to generalize and put into like the past and present and stuff like that. Like I've had managers who have been like, right, I trust you to do your job. I'll come
Yep.
out to you if you need anything, but like I trust you. You're an adult. You can do this. I'm not going to talk down to you. I'm not going to condescend or patronize you, or anything like that. And then they tend to be the less experienced but more empathetic kind of like managers who put their trust into their subordinates. And
Yeah.
then I've noticed that the more experienced ones would have a lot less trust in people. And I've seen this before probably because they might have been too trusting at one point in their career or whatever it may be. Maybe they just have a specific attention to detail. I don't know. I can't really say, but it's sort of quite interesting how that sort of goes that way. Is it?
Yeah.
Would you say it's like when you have that kind of sort of experience and tenure working with people that can kind of sort of change the level of trust you put into people, or what would you sort of say to that?
Yeah, that's it. That again, great question because I just turned 60. And when you look at the landscape of leadership and where people are on the journey, like, as I said before, it's always defined by their experience. So obviously, the more experience you have, the greater that filter is going to be based on that experience. We also have choice in the matter, and how we choose to either take the agency in our life or give it up to other people. And so even in the worst of experiences, we have an opportunity to learn lessons about it, to apply those lessons to it, but to not let those experiences drag us down and keep us from building those trusting relationships. And so when I come in and work with a team, I get all of that. I get the feedback from the people in the room that have that open architecture to trust, and I get the feedback from the people that treat trust like a prison, and they're going to keep it in there as long as they can, and only release it when they feel like all of the boxes are checked.
Yeah.
There's risk and vulnerability, but we have to have it to be able to achieve the best things in life. Otherwise, we lock ourselves out from it, and sometimes those triggers come in some of the most unreasonable areas. Like even when we don't agree with the way somebody sees the world, we'll close them off because we don't like the way they think about something. And we miss out on whatever creativity or contributions or uh, insights that that person can bring to the table. And so we end up cutting ourselves off from that. So we have to balance it. We have to learn the lessons when trust has been broken. We have to put the boundaries up that are necessary to protect ourselves. But we also have to keep in mind that if we choose to let that define us going forward, we're going to continue to cut ourselves off, possibly from the best experiences or the best solutions or the best opportunities to move into a new place.
Yeah, of course. Like, because without trust, especially in like a workplace and a team environment, like if there's no trust there, people will shy away from really kind of working to their potential. Like I've
Yep.
seen that happen. I've probably sort of fallen into that sort of myself in certain circumstances. Do you have you noticed ever in a team aspect like the line, especially when it comes to trust, like the line between professional trust and personal trust? Like, have you ever seen those two lines like kind of become a bit of a gray area in your experience?
So this is part of the fascinating mystery of trust is that it can exist in different planes for us.
Mm-hmm.
And so you might at work be somebody that opens yourself up and lets people in and does things, but at home you might be closing yourself off from your spouse because you don't want to have to deal with anything at that moment, and you just want to be fed the good things. But if you don't confront the difficult things at home, then those turn into much worse problems that can emanate into any number of terrible outcomes. And you can flip that script too, right? And have the same thing at work. And so part of what I try to teach people is that this is a whole person experience, and that you've got to work hard to be consistent in every place that you show up to do this, both for your own sanity and not feeling like that you're compartmentalizing your world into two different places, and then essentially becoming two different people as part of that. And you have to have people around you that can speak the truth to you about that. And if you don't, that very scenario will happen. And you'll go to work and be this one person and live a life there, and then come home and be a completely different person. And over time, that inconsistency will take the toll that it's going to take, and you're going to find yourself, either with a broken home because at home you've turned it off, or you're going to find yourself never being satisfied with the job you have,
Mhm.
because you've not allowed yourself to have that balance in the relationships. And all that to say too, it doesn't mean that we're going to be fools about it, and that we're not going to be able to to move forward, because what I teach people in terms of building trust, all of the attributes and all of the qualities they need to use as a filter for how they're allowing people to take the trust that they have. And if
Mhm.
somebody's out of step with that, then comes that idea of candor and saying, "Hey, you're not consistent here. You've got to be more consistent here in our personal and our professional relationships."
Yeah, for sure. Especially because there's that age old sort of saying, isn't there, of taking your work home with you. And I kind of feel like that's a sort of prime example of sort of not being able to switch off, and you bring your
Yeah.
problems home with you, and you're never really truly yourself. And especially if you're somewhere you can't be yourself, you have a terrible time, you go home, it does have its problems that do spill into the home, like you say, and with spousal trouble, whatever it may be, family, etc., etc. Like, and I mean, I fully 100% have experienced that myself. Like, I've been in jobs before where
Mhm.
I've not been able to really be myself, and then I kind of then feel like I can't be myself at home, or thankfully, I mean, I would probably rather be myself at home than I would in the
Yeah.
workplace, like to a degree. Obviously, I wouldn't want there to be too big a sort of divide between the two. Like, I think there needs to be like that kind of right balance. Like, you can trust yourself to go to work, you can trust yourself to be compliant, you can trust
Yeah.
yourself to, so whenever you like have your clients, do you like do you have to kind of hammer home a point about they need to trust themselves rather than kind of helping like their individual clients trust them? Does it have to be a two-way street as well in that aspect?
It always begins within yourself. If you don't have well, let me take a step back. At the core of what I try and teach people, Andy, is that we don't want to look at trust as a fragile emotion.
Mm-hmm.
What we want to embrace trust as our leadership or relationship operating system. That it becomes the system within ourselves as to how we're engaging with people, within how we approach the work that we do, and how we strive to achieve things greater than who we are. And going back to my health issue and why it's such an important part of the story, and why I embrace it today the way I do, you know, it forced me to do things that should have been doing years ago,
Yeah.
years before. It broke me out of a cycle of really some making bad decisions about my relationships, and being inconsistent in what I did. And today I live at a completely different level with that. At home, my wife, my kids, and I, we have an amazing relationship, and a lot of things got unlocked that taught me lessons in how I needed to be dealing differently, acting differently, living differently in that space. And same at work. I operate very differently in that space too. And so when I'm working with clients, my objective is to listen really well in terms of where they find themselves. I have a great opportunity to work with so many different organizations and so many different people, and yet there are consistent themes in what they struggle with. and they're the same ones that I was struggling with, and having that clear view of who you need to be, being honest about that, confronting those things, and then letting that then unpack decisions that you're going to make in terms of what you're pursuing and how you're pursuing it. And it impacts our health
Yeah.
as well. Running up to that point in 2019, I had to confront the idea that I was really angry about some things that were happening in my world. And as a result of that, I was making really bad decisions. And when all of those things compound on you, I have to honestly accept a heavy responsibility that all of those contributing factors likely caused what happened to me. And a lot of people wouldn't have gotten won't get the second chance to say, oops, okay, now I can fix it. And so I want to ensure that anyone I talk to, anyone I have an opportunity to work with and for, can take that template, not have to experience it firsthand, and put these lessons to work in their life without hopefully suffering the same things that I had to go through to get here.
Yeah, of course. Because, like you say, not everybody will get that second chance. So, like, if you do get that second chance, then you have to trust yourself to kind of look back and realize what it was that was going wrong and what
Yeah,
could potentially led to this. And like, I again, like, I find it fascinating, like the layers of trust, and especially when you look at it in like a family life kind of aspect. You look back and think like, yeah, like things were certainly like not right here, and to give you a personal example, and I think this is kind of like more of a strong bond thing rather than like maybe a trust thing, but like I think about like my wife, right? And just like this is a very minor silly thing, but like so yesterday she asked me to take a parcel to the post office for her, and I forgot, as I do, as I do. Didn't take it. I was meant to put it into the car before I went to work. Forgot, and then yesterday she comes home and she was home a bit later than me, and then she comes in. She's like, "Oh, I'm home, but I'm not really here. I've got to drive to the post office." And I was like, "My bad." And he's like, "No." I was like, "No, no, 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 no. Leave it, leave it. I'll take it tomorrow." And she was like, "You sure?" And I was like, "Yes, I will promise you, I'll take it tomorrow." And then tomorrow being today, and then it gets to 2 o'clock this afternoon, and I get a text. Oh, did you take that parcel to the post office? And I was like, thank you. I'm going right now. I'm going right now. But like, even at that, that's like for like a lot of people, maybe not like as deep as like a spousal level, but for a lot of people, that would be enough to like break somebody's trust.
right.
And but in this case, like my wife's just grateful that it was done. Like it's just for me, like the sort of how like deep the layers go of trust, and it obviously it depends on who the trust is with and what is done, but at the same time, I think it comes back to what we said about people having that choice of whether they really want to trust somebody or not, and I think that sometimes kind of comes down to the person
Yeah,
and maybe like a tolerance or like a patience thing, and I certainly noticed that in the corporate world as well. Like trust can be
right.
very very easily broken in that
It can.
regard.
Yeah. While I say you don't want to treat it like a fragile emotion and make it your operating system, on the flip side, it is very fragile with others. And it can, and you just hit on an important point that I tell a story anytime I teach or speak to people that about my daughter.
Mhm.
So my wife and I have four kids. We have three boys and a girl, and our girl is the youngest. Which, if you're a parent, you'll understand when I say that having that daughter changes the whole dynamic of the parent child relationship as a father. And so she's 22 now. She's getting ready to graduate college. But back in the day, when she was very very young, she loved crafts, and she's an artist today. So it stayed with her. I came home one Friday night and she had turned our dining room into a bracelet factory.
Wow.
And if you understand this, you know that it's an OSHA violation. It's a safety violation, and all those little beads, all the floor. Maybe only Legos do more damage to the feet as you're walking around. But she met me at the door and made a bracelet for me and said, "Daddy, will you wear it And of course, the only answer when your child makes something for you and asks that question is yes. And it happened to be Memorial Day weekend. And so we went to the church picnic and we went to the mall and we went to the movies. And I became what's technically known as show and tell. And so she would tell everyone about the bracelet, how she made it, how she picked the beads out. She put my name on it, all these different things. Come Tuesday morning, I got to get up and go to work. And back then, this sounds like ancient history. I had to put a suit on, coat, tie, the whole 9 yards, report to work that day. And I put the bracelet on the dresser and went off my way. I got home that night and she's still making bracelets. OSHA didn't get the memo. They didn't shut her down. I'm in the kitchen making dinner and she comes running in the kitchen and she's got another bracelet. And I'm thinking, oh, I've only got so much arm to give to your cause. And she looks at me and says, Daddy, if you didn't like the other bracelet, would you wear this one? And so here's my 5-year-old daughter, probably saw it sitting on the dresser. And in her little mind,
Oh, wow.
that's the only conclusion that she came to. And so I went back in the bedroom and I put it on and I wear it every day. And it's this little green bead
Oh,
bracelet.
amazing.
And I wear it for 2 reasons. One, because I told her I would. And two, it reminds me what you just pointed out, and that is that every little thing that I say or do is either contributing to or taken away from the trust that people have in me. All those little promises we make throughout the day, all those commitments that occur, all those are opportunities to either build your trust bank up or make withdrawals from it. And we've got to be mindful of that. And that goes to that intentionality that I talked about earlier, because even in our daily interactions, what you might interpret to be a passing comment that you make to somebody as you see them might be the one thing that resonates with that person every day. So you've got to watch what you say. You got to watch how you say it,
Yeah.
and do those things. And so I go back again, and I've said it 100 times already today. Be intentional about your relationships, and make sure that you're attending to those small things. They matter.
Of course, of course. Well, first of all, that's an incredible story. Like with your daughter, honestly, that is just such an incredible story. And like I love the notion of being intentional because I think a lot of people when they like look at trust and define trust, they put it down to people's actions and
Yeah.
in terms of do this for this, like almost like a transactional kind of thing. But it, as we've obviously discussed, it goes much, much, much deeper than that. And like even just the notion of just like somebody could just say something and it
Mhm.
doesn't have to be that kind of related. Somebody could just say something, like you say, if it resonates with somebody, they're not going to know if they can really kind of,
Yeah.
even if it comes down to like being a comfort thing as well at the same time. Like if you're not comfortable around somebody based on how they behave or things they say or do, for example, can't really trust that person. That the trust is kind of taken away just by your subconscious right from the get-go. And I think that's kind of a it's such a fascinating thing to kind of put that down to trust, because I think every single person, you, myself, who will, and the people who are listening to this, they will be able to think of somebody immediately who they might not feel the most comfortable or thing around, right? But the fact that that comes down to a trust thing, that's incredibly fascinating. Like because I never would have thought of that myself until like we've had that conversation. So that's incredible.
So in your life, you should carry a postcard around in your pocket to remind yourself to get to the mail, to get to the post office, that little
Yep,
promise you make to your wife is
absolutely.
gonna matter, right? Because she now relies on you because you said you
Yeah.
would.
Yep. I was gonna have to get like the barcode or the delivery label tattooed on my arm or something. Just to...
One of the first things I talk with a group about is how trust works.
Mhm.
And this open what we just talked about opens it up. And I'll ask the audience or the team to think about someone that they trust the most, and then to write down 3 words that really indicate why they trust them so much. And then the exercise is for them not to share the name or the person, but to share the words of why. And all those words that come up, love, consistency, candid, got my back, all these different things. Those words fall into 2 buckets at the end that illustrates an idea that says that trust is built on both an emotional plane and an experiential plane.
Yeah.
That there are certain things that we may react to emotionally that cause us to say, I could trust that person. But then over time, it's the experiences that we have with them that really feeds that. And then we break down from those two ideas what we call the four attributes of transformational trust. And so at the intersection of emotion and experience is the idea of trust that is foundational, and some of the contributing ideas for it is integrity and consistency, and that idea is trustworthy. So at the intersection of that is trustworthy, and trustworthy is different than trusted. Trustworthy is congratulations, you've earned the right to be trusted. It's your starting point, and then up the emotional scale is the concept we call of authenticity, having a real meaningful relationship with people, exercising respect and candor and some of these other qualities that are woven within that attribute. And then along the experiential plane is being dependable, providing a consistent, reliable performance, that you do what you say you're going to do on a regular basis, and that builds a reputation that we have. And so those are the first three of four. The fourth one is the way we contribute and the way we use that trust, and how we deliver on that trust on a regular basis, and that's influence. Influence is leadership, and so if we get trustworthiness, authenticity, and dependability right, and then we use that trust to make a difference, we use that trust in a positive way, we use that trust to build and not tear down, then that's the transformational way that it exists for us.
Yeah. Like when you break it down like that, that's incredible because I don't think I've ever heard it being looked at like that. Like just sort of you break it down to these like sort of different aspects of it, how sort of somebody gains your trust versus how that trust can be used, and that's fascinating. Like I've
Well,
never, you know,
the other thing it does for us, Andy, is trust is one of those words like love
yeah,
that we all know what it feels like. We all know when we've got it. We can't always put a finger on why. If I can provide you with a model that says these are the different dimensions and the areas and the triggers, then you can diagnose and go back and very specifically work on the thing that broke it.
yeah,
And you don't it takes a lot of the guesswork out, which is why I call it an operating system,
mm-hmm,
because a great operating system gives you the measures and the tools that you need to operate at a high level, but then also to fix and diagnose and take care of the things when they go off the rails.
mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So then, would you say then like the idea of trust would that could you put that onto like a spectrum between then personal and professional, or would it be something that's just built up of the things that we mentioned?
I like to look at it more as a whole
Yeah.
idea, because I don't think you can be good at something at work if you're not good at the same thing at home.
Mm-hmm.
um, and you can try to compartmentalize it, but you're always going to come up frustrated. And so if you are a rock star at work, you need to be a rock star at home. Otherwise, one's going to take away from the other. And when that box gets opened up and people look inside of it, they're going to judge you for not being consistent.
So then, when it comes to like your clients in a team-based way, and obviously, I'm sure you've worked with clients who their work days are incredibly time heavy. There's
Yeah.
less of a work-life balance. Then, how do you sort of coach them to get that consistency and to get that balance of work and home with that?
It's a great question. So two things. One, the output of a team training is for that team to adopt what we call a trust contract. So at the end of the training session, everybody gets into groups and they brainstorm lists of affirmative statements as to how, as a team, we are going to prioritize and live up to the standards that we've just spent the last 4 hours talking about. And I work with the executive, whoever it is that hired me and brought me in, and we draft that into a, call it 10 or 12 statements that become an agreement among the team that says This is how we're going to focus on and build relationships, foster relationships, repair relationships based on trust. And that contract becomes part of the cultural construct that works alongside your mission, your vision, your values, and your service standards. And it should have elements of those baked into that so that there's the voice is the organization and the
Mm-hmm.
team. It's not just rehashing what's in my training manual. And so they adopt it, they sign it, and everybody gets a copy of it and is held accountable. So it becomes a point of inspiration and accountability for that team. Now, I'm getting to your question by saying that because when we when we commit to something at that level, it has to be all of us. It can't just be, I can't turn it off and on. And so as I'm teaching them in the course, and then as I'm coaching them in the process, all of our conversations come down to how are you doing? How is the whole person doing? Talk to me about how it's showing up at home, how it's showing up at work, and how you are striving to get to that place that you need to be where you know you're living it at its highest and best level.
Yeah, like I like what you say about the accountability with that though, because it kind of embodies into the people. It's like, or embeds into the people, I should say, that this is what you need to do to have that balance. You need to sort of take that responsibility. You need to just like,
Mhm.
if you think if you think that you can't be consistent in both work and home, well then there's something wrong. You have to kind of break it down. You have to look at what's going wrong, look at what's causing that, and then just sort of fix that, find the balance. And it, obviously I'm simplifying it, but it's, I think the accountability side of it like is just incredible, because sometimes when people kind of like look at the notion of trust, they, it's a gut feeling to a lot of people, and I think on an emotional level it is, but 100% at the same time, if you need to trust yourself, that kind of does come from within. You have to go and do it. You
Yeah.
have to kind of make the necessary changes. You have to get the habits, and you're, well, to throw an old cliche out there, be the master of your own destiny.
Yeah. Well, and I will tell you that I I work to position myself as an authority in this, and at the same time, there are people in my life that hold me accountable
Mm-hmm.
to this. There are particularly men that I will go to and say, um, "Call me out on this. Tell me where I'm doing this well, but more importantly, tell me where I'm not,
Yeah.
and what I need to do, and ping me and ask me questions and hold me accountable." And at home, my wife and I had that same idea, and we try to keep as much transparency and openness in the conversations because if you ignore it, if you try to brush it under the carpet, if you it'll manifest into something that creates that inconsistency or that break from being true to who you should be, and it'll cause a lot of disruption.
Yeah.
And so the other functional side of the trust contract is I all one of my favorite scenarios that I'll get from a CEO or a leader that's adopted this trust contract is they'll have somebody come in their office, slam the door, and then just start complaining about someone. And inevitably they'll turn around, they'll grab the trust contract, they'll lay it on the table and say, "Did you go through this? Before you came to talk to me and complain about that person, did you go through this?" And instantly they usually get up, walk out the door, and now they figured out, nope, I didn't. And I don't want to oversimplify or tell you it's a panacea for everything, but just that little set of accountability
Yeah.
in that contract can transform how people and how a culture looks.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I definitely think that it is something that a lot of places could and should really take on, because it's important. It's important for trust to sort of go down and go back up. And that's kind of what kind of helps, whether it be professional environments and relationships, thrive.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, Roy, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on Behind the Camera with Andy Games. Thank you so much for your time. This has honestly been such an inspiring story and such an enlightening chat, just based on like everything around trust. I feel like I've learned a lot, honestly. So thank you so much for your time. I would just like to give you the floor. for a moment to just sort of plug yourself for the listeners, where the listeners can find you?
Absolutely. So, two things. One, I put a link in the chat that you can share with your listeners, which is the website where they can buy my book, The Trust Transformation. And the other thing I'll put here is my website, which is roywreid.com. And so if they check that out, they can get in touch with me there. And I'm on all social media. So I'm on LinkedIn as Roy Reid, Instagram as Roy Reid APR. I would love to hear from people. And my part of the joy that I get is hearing people's stories about trust and learning from them. And having them challenge me or engage me to come in and take a look at some of the things that they're dealing with.
Yeah, of course. And that's the beauty of storytelling. Everybody's story is different. People will take different perspectives from things, especially when it comes to trust. So definitely, if you're listening to this, do check out Roy's resources there with for his book, his website, and don't be afraid to reach out. Have that trust that you will have you will have a great conversation, because I know I sure have. So
Good.
once again, Roy, thank you so much for your time. It has been a brilliant chat.
Thanks for having me.
Take care now. And there you have it. That brings us to the end of episode 52 of Behind the Camera with Andy Games. A huge thank you to Roy Reid for joining me and sharing his incredible story. I left our conversation feeling truly touched and inspired, and I hope it has the same impact on you too. Once again, if you'd like to support the podcast, my link tree in the About section has everything from socials, merch, website, and all the good stuff. A follow, a rating, a share, etc. all goes a long way. Until next time, take care, stay creative, and I'll see you soon. But until then, peace.